everyone, and welcome to No Off Season. I'm Zena.
I'm Sabreena Merchant.
And I'm Ben Pickman.
And today on the show, we had questions, they had answers. We're digging into more responses for the Athletics WNBA player poll. We're hitting on expansion, CBA wish list, moolah, and more. All right, let's get right into it. So in case you didn't watch or catch the last episode we put out yesterday, Sabreena, can you fill us in on the details of the WNBA player poll, how it worked, what were the parameters, lay it out?
Yeah, so this is a poll that Ben and I and our colleague Chantel Jennings conducted anonymously with players around the league. We have respondents from all 13 teams in the WNBA, and we presented them with a series of 10 questions. They were able to skip any ones that they wanted or provide an answer, if they chose. As you can tell, if you've looked on the site, there were a lot of skips. The numbers do not all add up the same because people were more interested in answering some questions than others. And because the poll contains a lot of questions about the health of the league and expansion and bigger topics, we deliberately chose not to ask any rookies because we started conducting this poll in May and they had been in the league for all of a week by the time that we started conducting the poll. So This is all non-rookies in the WNBA. This is our sample size, and we got about a third of those non-rookies.
Okay. Well, today we are turning our attention to some more business-related questions, and we got to start with the hot topic of the moment, which is expansion. Where do actual players want to actually play?
It's a good question, Zena, and I'm glad that you framed it as a hot topic question because the answer is a place in which the city gets very hot. That would be Miami, Florida. I don't know if you knew that.
Yes.
When you asked the question or not, but I played very well. Miami was the overwhelming response that we received. And look, a lot of players said they cited the weather, right? Like, it's beautiful down there. It would be so nice to travel in the summer. And, some people mentioned the fans too. But, like, Miami, again, overwhelming favorite for us as a response. And look, Unrivaled was down there. I think a lot of players also experienced Miami in the winter, which is also a very nice place as well. But like a long road trip in Miami, I mean, a lot of players were saying, like, who says no to that?
Also, no state tax. I'm sure, Sabreena, that might have factored into it as well. I'm thinking, outside of Miami, LA is always like a hot spot to go. But were there any questions or responses that indicated maybe because of the fan vibe, this is where they would want to go? Or maybe the organization, like the people that are pushing for a particular city, may have enticed players to want to play somewhere?
So I didn't personally hear anything about organizations or the people making the bids, but I will say that geography kind of played an important factor here. If you think about the geographical makeup of the 13 current WNBA teams and the ones that are being projected to add, Atlanta is the only team that exists in the southeast of the United States. And so Miami obviously would help solve that because it is in the southeast of the United States. And another answer that we got frequently was Nashville, or, we even had somebody who just said like somewhere in the southeast, because that is just where you're missing this, geographical location, right? Like Atlanta, I think, is the only team within an 8-state region in the southeast. So if you're a young girl who like watches the South Carolina Gamecocks or watches, any of the teams in North Carolina, or it's just in that general area of the United States, that's the only team you can really drive to go see is the Atlanta Dream. So to help resolve that, just by bringing more teams to that general area of the United States, I think is something that was on the players' minds. And we should mention that when we started asking this question, none of the expansion teams had been announced yet, Cleveland, Detroit, or Philadelphia. So by the time we concluded conducting the poll, expansion had been announced. And so players were, I think, less interested in saying the teams that had actually been announced so far.
Sure.
But you'll notice in the answers of the poll, like we got Cleveland a couple times, but Detroit and Philadelphia don't come up. And that was before they were even answered. So like announced as expansion teams. So it's not like, oh, people saw that they were already getting teams and then decided like, I'm not going to use that as one of my answers. They didn't come up at all.
I'm wondering if the WNBA polled at all in terms of, making that decision for the teams that they did decide upon in Cleveland, Detroit, and Philadelphia. And it's worth saying, like, we talk about the southeast of the United States, like Charlotte Sting did exist. The Miami Soul did exist. These were teams that have since folded. And so there's an opportunity, and there's a fan base, and there's a history and a culture that does exist in these pockets of the Southeast. And yeah, it definitely makes sense. I mean, as a girl that grew up in North Carolina, that is why I'm like particularly drawn to ACC basketball. And I was drawn to ACC
Yep.
basketball even before I was drawn to the WNBA, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. And that's why, again, Nashville and Charlotte received a good amount of responses kind of in our poll. But I like that you raised the did the WNBA office ask players question here, because the league office would probably say like they consulted or they looked at whatever, 20, 25 different kinds of metrics in determining their eventual expansion cities. We should say like we ask all of these questions in kind of like a rapid fire succession. So there's no data analysis that is going on. We're not preempting anyone with here's the market size, here is the population, here's what the average Nielsen rating is, here's what corporate partnerships and brands are based in that city. Like, we're not doing any of that. This is just like straight off the cuff. And that I think kind of plays into, again, the perceptions that people have. One interesting one, someone threw out a Vancouver got one response. I thought that was kind of interesting. And we got a bunch of Bostons as well. Which, a lot of people are saying, could the Connecticut Sun eventually move there? We'll see, but interesting to hear another Northeast city, even with all the expansion that has happened in the Northeast over the next couple years in the W.
I should clarify.
Yeah, I've
Philly
heard
did
a
get
little-
one vote. I don't see Detroit on the list, but there was one vote for Philadelphia. So not a total loss for the WNBA expansion project.
Got you. I do feel like I've heard so much about Boston, and of course, we've seen the Connecticut Sun bring their games to Boston and how well those games have performed in terms of just support and all the above. And I'm like, yeah, I feel like you're double dipping if you're doing that. Like the Connecticut
Right.
Sun could easily become Boston's team at that point. It'd
Well-
just be a little bit. Oh, what'd you say?
Well, I was going to say the timing of you raising that point is a good one, Zena, because when you are listening to this podcast, the Connecticut Sun will have already just played the Indiana Fever on Tuesday night in Boston in the Sun's
There you go.
annual game in that city. A sellout crowd. Again, they blew it up on sports radio in Boston. I think they took it, they aired the broadcast over the airways, or that was the plan. Like, clearly there's a bunch of other events. The city was very excited to host the Sun for the second consecutive year.
I'm happy you brought up, just the blowing up of games, the ticket sales, the making sure that everyone is hearing about these games, because all of that contributes to ding, 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 basketball-related income. And if you listen to our show about the CBA, about the value that players have to the WNBA, you'll know that basketball-related income is a very important factor when it comes to the revenue share component of the CBA. So we got to talk about money, moolah, l'argent. Okay. And you guys asked a couple questions about the CBA, salary expectations. And I want to know, what did you guys hear from the players? Sabreena, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so one of the questions we asked was if there was one thing you could include in the new CBA, what would it be? And overwhelmingly, like 2/3 of the responses here, even more than that, were higher salaries, just more money, right? Like we've heard a lot of priorities given by the WNBPA, and including like revenue share and pension and all sorts of things like that. I mean, roster spots is something that comes up as well. But when it comes to one thing that you would want to include in the new CBA, it is all about the money. Maximum salary right now is $250,000. We had an additional question about what the maximum salary should be that Ben can get into, but it's just too low for what the WNBA is bringing in revenue-wise. And so this was the question that had the most consensus of anything that we asked. It was just players want higher salaries, period.
That's exactly where it lands. I mean, Ben, I don't know. We talked about this in our show about the CBA, et cetera. Like, I don't know that the WNBA can get away from this question, like at this particular portion of it, with all of the growth that's happening, with all of this, this investment that's happening. They cannot cry poor, and they can't say that they can't afford to pay these players, or else that means that they're not making money. And if you ask anybody who got their seats this season and saw their seat prices raise and saw all this, everything else just in the world and ecosystem of the WNBA rise, they gotta answer about something when it comes to these salaries.
Yeah, I mean, that is a question I'm sure, players at the CBA is asking players what is important to them, and then they're asking a follow-up of what do you think the max salary should be, and they're certainly consulting a whole team of experts when they ask that question too. When we asked that question, I guess the answer we got more than anything else was as high as possible, which I think is a pretty human and relatable
Fair.
answer, because I don't
Right.
want to speak for you, Zena, or you, Sabreena, but if someone was going to ask you, Zena, how much do you want to get paid? You would probably say as much
high
as possible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There you go. As much as possible.
So that was the answer we got the most when we heard that question. We did hear some actual kind of then more granular or tangible numbers. $1 million. 8 players said that. At least
like
1
it.
million was another response we got from a few players.
Closed
Two
mouths don't
said
get fed, Ben.
1.5 million. Yeah, two players said 1.5 million. And some said even less, honestly. One player said something fair, which I think is another reasonable response. So we did get a little bit of a range. Some players also skipped that question, again, not wanting to give away any leverage potentially, or because they felt that they were not informed enough on the topic or didn't feel comfortable sharing. But money is definitely important. We should shout out, Sabreena mentioned it, the 2 players who said pension. That is what we call some real long-term planning. When we
Yeah.
think about money and retirement and adding pensions, like, claps to those players who said pensions, because anyone can get paid right now, Zena. But when you're trying to do some
Right.
life planning, like, that's where that pension plan can come in handy.
I know these player polls were anonymous, but the players that we said yesterday as our voices of the league, I feel like maybe they could have been the ones influencing that sort of response, because that is so true. These players put their bodies on the line for years and years and years, and they finish playing. What do they have to show for it? What kind of things can they, be able to make sure that their families themselves are protected long after they play? What else came up? Because one of the things I'm very curious about is when the teams expanded and Cleveland and Detroit and Philadelphia were announced, it wasn't a resounding applause. It wasn't a yes, a cheer heard through and rippling through all the WNBA. Some folks wanted roster spots before expansion teams. Some folks wanted other priorities before expansion teams. So what was next up on the CBA negotiations in terms of priorities beyond, of course, as much money as possible?
Well, it's interesting that you bring up roster spots, because one of the things that I've done while we've been collecting this poll is looking back at what the players' poll said in 2023, the last time we conducted this exercise. And at that point, there were 12 teams in the WNBA. Golden State was in the process of being announced, but I don't think had it actually happened yet. So it was still a 12-team league for the foreseeable future. And the question that we had asked was, what would you rather have, more roster spots or league expansion? And a majority of the answers were more roster spots. So, for that to not have happened yet, right, is an interesting look into the player psyche then. And obviously it was not the preeminent concern, because, again, the question was one thing you could include in the new CBA, and money takes precedent to the new roster spots. But I thought that was an interesting just look back as to, only 2 years ago, what WNBA players were thinking.
Well, and if we can pile on with that, like 2 years ago, we also did a survey, anonymous GM survey. Sabreena and I did. Not that we are only doing, again, we're not just doing polls and pollster
other
work
jobs,
here at The Athletic. We do other things too, as you well know. But like, we asked GMs, what should be prioritized in the next CBA negotiation? And for this question, so many GMs had a lot of thoughts, not surprisingly so. But the response we heard the most from, I think it was 4 GMs at that time, was travel, right? That was the most important thing. The executive said was very important, and the issue of charter travel. That seems to be something that, obviously, in the last subsequent 2 years, the league has evolved on and resolved that issue. They've addressed it, right, exactly, with the current charter flights policy. Now, what is interesting is we did have a player or two, I want to say, reference minimum standards, like work standards, and that is something that is this broad umbrella term that you've heard maybe some players talk about in recent weeks and months, that refers to things like facility, codifying things as it relates to a facility, or, resources for families. That is something that can also, some players said that specifically, but like that can also fit into the minimum standards bucket, where like, having a facility must have a nursery room, for instance, for families. Codifying things like charter flights can also fit into something like minimum standards, because I'm sure that the PA in the upcoming negotiation is going to want to get in writing fully in the CBA, like what the travel conditions are going forward. So it is interesting, again, as a look back exercise to see how much things have changed over the last 2 years. But, flights and travel, important then, seemingly less important from the player perspective, at least now.
Yeah, which makes sense. I mean, they were able to address that aspect of it, and I'm looking at the W like, okay, y'all read that article. You didn't read the other one about the players wanting roster spots before expansion teams, but that's okay. We'll let you. We're calling you out right now, W. Listen to this now. Players now want money. Okay, they want that more than anything. Hopefully, they're listening to that and making sure that's a priority. It's so funny. I'm listening to all of this and I'm wondering, it must feel really, you must feel the pressure if you're in the WNBA office in terms of what was set up in Unrivaled, right? Like, Ben, you were down there and you saw some of the things that you just listed codified. You saw the elements of supporting mothers and making sure that the facilities in which players played in were equal and across the board. Like, you saw all of these things be a part of the entire mix. Of course, Unrivaled happened in one space. It is significantly harder to be able to do that across landscapes, across different economic
different work environments.
different work environments all across the country. But there is something to be said that they were able to do it. And so I'm just wondering, do you think that impacts the players being like, listen, it happened here, figure it out, WNBA? Is the standard even higher now because it actually happened with Unrivaled?
Yeah, absolutely. And I wrote a little bit about this back in March at the end of the Unrivaled season about ways that league could influence the WNBA. And one of the things that we highlighted in that piece was just that idea. Exactly, Zena, that they're not totally analogous, right?
Right.
Unrivaled is funded differently. It's a 10-week season. It's single site this past year. Its footprint, as we said, very different. It's a different style of play. Like, there are differences. And yet, it is another high-level competitive alternative that is based in the United States, where a lot of the best players in the world can play. And so, yeah, it definitely showed what is possible, I think, in the eyes of some players. And it definitely helped shape, like, wow, this is a league that just was built out of the ground. And here's what we have in year one. Whereas the WNBA is going on, it'll almost be 3 decades old, and here's what players are still asking for in the WNBA. Again, they're two different leagues, but certainly it serves as a reference point, even if some people maybe in the league office would say it's a little bit of an unfair reference point, too.
Sure. Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. All right, well, listen, we're rooting for everyone to win here, rooting for the players to get some money, rooting for the WNBA to figure it out, to be able to make some money and make some money for the league as well. But I'm happy that we were able to get these questions asked. Now let's get off the money a little bit. Let me back to the court. Okay. And I'm excited for this question. Got one last thing to discuss. It's not going to be who's going to win the title. I know we're going to get into that later this week. But right now, we're talking trash. Okay. We're talking a little bit of spice out on the floor. And you guys asked who the best trash talker in the WNBA is. And we have to set up the context here that easily the answer for years was Diana Taurasi. You want to talk about a legend in the game when it comes to trash talk? Absolutely, Diana Taurasi. And we say that in the most respectful of ways, okay? But now, opportunity to pass the torch. And I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot out there. I've seen a lot of F-bombs. But we got to understand this. Let's make a difference here. It's not just who's cussing out the refs, right? It's people who are maybe cussing out the refs, but are also making you question your entire decision to play professional basketball on a daily basis, okay? That is true trash talk. That makes you go, do I want to lace up today? Do I still want to play this game? They to your core, they get to it. So before we reveal, I got some guesses as to who the top trash talker is. My instinct is to say Marina Mabrey. That's just my instinct. But I want to know where it landed. Let me know. How off am I? Where'd we land on this one?
Marina was third on the list. People are aware of
Okay.
Marina's, proclivity for being in dust-ups when they happen. She will readily admit to that too. So I think Marina, perfectly reasonable answer. Not the most common answer, but four responses for Marina Mabrey. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I like it. Ben, just reveal it to us. Who was the best trash talker in the game?
That would be Alyssa Thomas of the Phoenix Mercury,
yes.
who has, she has taken the baton from Diana Taurasi, and in this new era of the Phoenix Mercury, she is carrying the baton of elite trash talking, at least per players, into the next generation.
That is someone that absolutely will make me question if I want to still play basketball ever again. Ben, you got a game for us?
Yeah, I got a game for us as we close out this show, Zena. It's on the theme of trash talking and really just buzzy quotes in general. Just some things that I've heard over the last month that have kind of caught my ear. Some might be related to some of the players we've talked about. Some might not. And I just want you to know it's a very simple who am I? I'm just going to throw a quote from a player or coach out, and you just have to tell me who said it. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Great. Here's the quote. Quote, I'm used to this team reading at a PhD level. I think we've been reading more at a middle school level. Any guesses as to who said that?
Someone
Strong piece of analysis.
Team.
It's got to be Cheryl Reeve or Becky Hammond. One of the two.
It is Becky Hammond. It is Becky Hammond. She was talking about the Las Vegas Aces and how they used to, I guess, be able to read and react at a very high level, and now she's trying to teach them at a more basic level. When Becky said it, I should say, she recognized that was kind of a buzzy quote and then tried to explain the analogy a little bit more. But
there we go.
Full of context there. Quote number 2, I think this is a gimme as well. Quote, Kathy called me. I actually declined the phone call at first because I didn't have the number. Zena, Sabrina's laughing because she knows, but Zena, do you know who said this?
Kathy called me. I feel like this is like an Alicia Gray quote.
Is that your final guess?
Or Brianna Stewart? No, Brianna would definitely have her number.
Sabrina, you want to do...
Who is it?
This is Courtney Williams when Kathy called her about becoming an all-star.
Yes, that's right. Oh, gosh, I should have known that. That's a good one. I can just imagine Alicia saying that, though.
I hope she did.
Yeah, I'm sure she did.
Hope she did. And we should say Courtney Williams second on the trash talking list. Quote number 3, and I should say I have 4 quotes here. I would dunk on everybody. It's not just one. Everybody getting dunked on. Line up. Everybody getting head tapped, especially you. And this player then pointed at a particular player. Anyone want to take a guess as to who's dunking on whom and who is talking trash in that way?
So I've seen this like social post of like the players get asked, if you could dunk on one person on your team, who would you dunk on? And I want to say this was like an LA Sparks thing, but I can't remember like who was the one who was saying they dunk on everyone. It feels like a rare Rakia thing to say, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like this is a Rakia Jackson quote.
That is a Rakia Jackson quote.
Okay,
well done, guys.
Yes,
well done.
There we go. Yes.
Well done.
I love. Also, Rakia Jackson was talking some trash the other night.
Oh my God, so much trash to Bria Hartley.
Ooh, it was hot. It was hot.
In the Instagram comments afterwards too.
Yeah. Go check that out, guys. One last quote from Ben.
One last quote, and I should say this comes from a player. It's a spoiler who I don't think she is a big trash talker, but I wanted to include it anyway. And the quote is simple: I signed up for a membership for Six Flags.
What does this have to do with trash talk?
It doesn't, but it's just a fun quote that I thought we should end it on.
I know who it is. It's Lee Uru.
Yep.
Oh my God.
That is correct. Well done, Zena.
So many hearts out to Lee Uru. She's good for a good quote.
It's pretty much the opposite of trash talking. There's a video out there from a couple weeks ago of Leroux reflecting on a trip that the Dallas Wings made on an off day to one of the local Six Flags, and she's talking about how she hated all the roller coasters that were, up and down and very scary and just high speed, and she liked, I think, I guess the Kitty Cups a little more. I want to say that's the ride. I'm not a roller coaster expert more, but Lee gave 2.5 minutes of great Six Flags analysis, and then she concluded it by saying that she signed up for a membership. So,
which I didn't know was possible. Wow. I just love Leroux. Thank you, Ben, for that amazing game. And if we're talking about signing up for anything, y'all need to be signing up for this show. Okay, you need to be subscribing because we're gonna keep being beat here. We're gonna keep being here. We're gonna have more content for you. That's why you got to come back tomorrow. We've got a special episode featuring different kinds of power rankings, franchise power rankings featuring the players' thoughts on the best and worst run organizations in the WNBA. And so that's why you got to go follow the show. Be like Leroux and Six Flags. Here's the analogy. You with no off season, okay? Sign up. Make sure that you're coming back. You're enjoying. We're Kitty Cup rides if you want, but we also are roller coasters. Okay, we got a lot of that. Also head on over to our partner, Yahoo Sports Hub, sports.yahoo.com/women's-sports. On behalf of The Athletic, Ben Pickman, Sabreena Merchant, the rides at Six Flags, I'm Zena Cada. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in to No Off Season. To hear more, be sure to like and subscribe. We drop new episodes every Tuesday and Friday.